Hi, I'm Scott Simpson,
And I'm Sharla Steever.
and we're at Sharla's house.
Yes, we are.
It's lovely. It's
Thanks.
beautiful.
Thank
it's
you.
it's an incredibly beautiful day outside. It's cold, but it's beautiful, sunny.
Super cold.
It is.
Sub-zero and snow, but
And you guys, you remember at our house, my house, they were dumping gravel outside. They're burning things here.
Yes.
They're taking care of that. You know that
great big burn pit.
Yep. In the wintertime, when it's all safe to do the burning, they're taking care of
Smells
some old
good.
brush. It does smell nice. I love that smell.
I do too.
Reminds me of my grandpa's hunting cabin.
Oh,
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
nice.
He had a little woods. That's a different episode. All right, we'll use that as a third thing sometime.
Okay.
So this is my episode. I
it
think
is.
Yeah.
So are you ready?
I hope so. I hope so. I think so. We're gonna
I'm
go.
sure you are.
We'll
You're
see.
always ready.
We'll see. We'll see. You'll know in about 30 minutes whether or not I was ready. So we have these 4 themes.
Yes.
And the themes are uniqueness, relationships, relational learning, and then self-care.
Right.
Okay, and we kind of revisit each of those in a different way. And when we first developed those themes, it was part of we did a keynote called Being Human. And uniqueness, which is the first one, was really all about valuing the uniqueness in individuals, valuing the uniqueness within ourselves, highlighting that and being, really making space, like in the workplace or in the classroom or in our homes, that people can bring their uniqueness. And so that's really been where we're at. We've done, I think now, 4 uniqueness episodes.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think we're in our 5th.
I think
set.
this is going to be our 5th set of going around through those themes. And you know how I am. I felt like, how can we just really take this in a different direction?
Oh boy.
So
Okay.
so we're still doing uniqueness, but instead of the kind of uniqueness which we want to celebrate all the time, we are going to take this episode, and I hope it won't be too depressing.
Uh-oh.
We're going to take this episode to look at the kind of uniqueness that we don't need to celebrate.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
I never know what he's going to do.
No,
so
I know.
That's part of the
That's
fun.
part of what we try to do. We try to keep it, as we say, fresh. So we're going to actually deal with a little bit with toxic people.
Okay.
Have you known a toxic person? I'm not asking you to name the toxic
Okay.
person. Have you had toxic people in your life?
I have.
Yeah, and I have too, at different times. And the challenge about that is, as we always say, we want to work to value others' uniqueness. Maybe, and we'll talk about this, maybe there comes a time when you say, you know what, for me, for right now, the particular uniqueness about this other person is not something I need to continue to be around. And that's a hard call, okay? It's a real hard call.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes we get to that place. And for some of us, maybe the 2 of us included, it's almost an impossible call to make. I know that I have remained engaged with, at different times, toxic people, probably for a little longer than was helpful. I don't know.
I think I have too, and at times it's because maybe it was part of my job,
Sure.
and it was a matter of livelihood.
Right.
And not having necessarily another good alternative. I can also say occasionally it's been close friends or family that have become toxic.
Right.
And, and sometimes it passes. Sometimes, the relationship shifts.
Yeah.
And it gets a little better, but sometimes it doesn't. And you don't feel you can leave that.
Well, and maybe we'll get into this some. The easy answer, none of it's easy, but the easiest answer is a toxic person, stay away. The more challenging answer is when, in the case of a work situation, or in the case of family, or in the case of something, you have to manage that in some way, which means I need to be clear in my own mind at least where my boundaries are, so that I'm not just inviting pain and a negative space for myself constantly. Now, we do that all the time. I mean, I'm happy to welcome in a little bit of pain in dealing with a friend empathetically and working through something with somebody, even someone who's angry with me, but they're not toxic, but we're in a disagreement. I'm okay with dealing with that pain, but knowing the difference between that and toxicity, where I've got to say, okay, I'm not going to fix this. Maybe I still have to deal with it some, but I'm going to set my boundaries.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where we're going, and I hope that works, and I hope it's helpful. I hope it doesn't.
Sure it will be.
Well, we'll see. So we start out with we're going to start out with a third thing, and I actually have two third things.
Okay.
Okay, and they are poems. As you know, we quite often do poems. These are both very short poems. That's why we're doing two, okay? But they also take a very slightly different view. So we're going to take a look at this, read it, and then chit-chat a little bit about it, and then we'll take a look at the second one and do that too. So this first one is by one of my favorite poets, E.E. Cummings. I've talked about E.E. Cummings before, and one of the things I love about E.E. Cummings is the beauty of much of his poetry is dealing with things that are just lovely and spring-like and just abandon and beauty and some things like that, or deep love, connection. This one is a little different. So we'll pull this up on the screen for you. As with most of E.E. Cummings' poems, this one really doesn't have a title. So usually they just call it something. This one they're calling You Are Tired, I think. You have played, I think, and broke the toys you were fondest of, and are a little tired now. Tired of things that break, and just tired. So am I. So, when I saw this, at first I think you could take this as just, there's a childlike simplicity about Cummings, and you could take it as, a kid who broke a toy, until you get to that last line. So am I. And then you begin to say, so what's been broken here? And if we go to the idea of broken relationships, or even breaking people, then when you go back to that word toys, there's a real ominous feeling about that. I don't know. How did this strike you?
Well, I was thinking about the things that I'm fondest of.
Yeah.
And I can actually think of a couple relationships that were very close, very wonderful relationships that broke.
Yeah.
And for me, the ones that I'm thinking of, they broke without me really understanding why. And I would say that made me tired. It talks about being tired of things that break. Sometimes I feel that way. I feel like, what is it? Why is it that relationships and being with people, why is it so hard?
Yeah.
Sometimes. And that's really what it made me think of.
And I think maybe you have to ask yourself, if we're talking about relationships breaking, you have to once again ask yourself, is this one of those times when we hit a rough patch, okay? And you said something that you wouldn't normally say. I said things that I wouldn't normally say, and we just kind of really got rough, and now it's okay. Or is this something that happens again and again and again, and it's just part of either the nature of our relationship, or the nature of you, or the nature of me? I mean, this is really about other people who are toxic. I think that's where we're going. But also, if I begin to realize that maybe I am toxic, then that's a whole nother thing. That's a whole nother problem.
Right.
But yeah, you said it says the toys you were fondest of, and when I think about what I'm fondest of, and it is people. It's people that mean a whole lot to me. But I also know, and maybe this is true for you, I don't know. I know that I can take advantage of the people I'm closest to more so than I would take advantage of strangers. And it's not because I love the people I love less than I love strangers. It's because I love them so deeply and I know them so deeply and they've already seen all my bad stuff.
They're not going anywhere.
They're not going anywhere. And I'm not hiding anything from them anyway. So then I don't think twice sometimes about using them a little too much, leaning on them in a way that maybe they don't need to be leaned on.
And I think there's a healthy level of that. We all need those folks in our lives that, they're there no matter what.
Yeah.
But yes, to take advantage of that or to do it too often or have it become part of what your relationship is this is the person I go to.
Do you think a pattern like that starts out innocently can then become a characterizing pattern in a relationship?
I think so.
So I think that's why early on, being aware and making other people around you aware really of who you are and what hurts and what's important. It's why it's so important to do that early on, because the further along you go, the more practiced those patterns, those toxic patterns become. And then it's really hard to get out of it.
I think also sometimes people that's their thing they do with you, and then you see them out like having fun or goofing with other people.
Oh, so you can be nice. So you can be thoughtful.
Right.
Wow.
And that's part of that toxicity too, I think, is when you're only ever experiencing that rough part and you don't ever get any of the joy of being in relationship with that person. Right.
Well, I think this is part of the reason why commitment and marriages and things like that sometimes get such a bad rap today, because people recognize a lot of the toxicity that can happen inside that. And I think just saying, no, I'm not going there is not the answer. I think saying, you know what, if I'm going to have a relationship, whether it's a marriage or whether it's a friendship or whether it's a whatever it is, my brothers and sisters, my family, if I'm going to have a relationship, I'm going to work to make sure that at least I'm not toxic, but I'm also being aware of the toxic things that crop up and we deal with them early. So let's look at this other one. This is another poem by someone who doesn't typically write poetry. In fact, this is Margaret Atwood, and she has written lots of fiction, including the big TV series right now. Oh my gosh! Oh, it's huge. Handmaid's Tale.
Sure.
Handmaid's Tale, which is kind of a dark.
It's very dark.
Okay, it's kind of dark. It's dystopian. Okay, this is a nice little short poem. But I'd read this poem years and years ago, and it just it's one of those that's really short, but it just goes, wow, man, that hurts. Okay, so this one takes what E. Cummings was talking about and it just puts it up there on the front burner. 4 lines. We'll put it up on the screen here. You fit into me like a hook into an eye, a fish hook, an open eye. And you laugh.
I know.
And you laugh.
Wow.
Okay.
You said we were going dark.
It's kind of extreme. It is kind of extreme. Okay, but okay, I'm not going to ask, have you not felt that? But do people not get to that point? I mean, seriously, we do. I have on occasion, rare occasion, but probably to that degree, been hurt by someone that I just totally trusted.
Yep, I have too, and I can tell you that there are a couple folks in my life that the mention of their name,
yes,
sends me there.
We talk about triggers. You know, this is a trigger. I mean, goodness gracious, you see a fish hook. In fact, just to use her metaphor, when I go fishing, particularly fly fishing, which I haven't done in a number of years, when I go fly fishing with someone who hasn't been fly fishing much, I make sure I'm not standing anywhere close as they're trying to get that,
Right.
rhythm down, because I have this visceral feeling of what that would feel like, whether it was in the eye or in the cheek or in the back or in the arm or wherever it is, you have, and that's that triggering thing.
Yep.
And that person who has hurt you like that can trigger that. Just their name.
And to me, I'm going to say, maybe this is taking us off a different way, but
No, it's
I'm going to
okay.
say that sometimes that says a lot more about where I am at than that person. When I'm still
sure.
holding on to something that happened maybe long ago, but still has that kind of visceral sort of response in me. I mean, that's I guess a point in time that I need to look at again.
Well, I think there's two things there. I think there's one, I may be holding on to something that is, I'm just holding on to, and that's my problem. Okay, especially if they're not around anymore, they're not in my life. It doesn't help me actually feel better to wish them ill. That's not helpful to me. It just keeps it alive in me. Okay, there's that. But then there's also, and this I think really is, if I was going to say what's the crux of what I wanted to happen in this episode, me being able to differentiate between what is my stuff. Okay, I'm holding on. I'm holding this grudge. I'm nursing it. I'm keeping it alive. I'm for my own, messed up purposes, and that's a thing. Versus, this person is really unhealthy for me. And until they fix that, which I can't fix them, okay, I need to be aware and put a, do not enter sign or something, at least in part of my brain. So differentiating between those, because I do think we sometimes jump to demonize someone and say, oh, he's just toxic, when really a good chunk of it is my issue,
And that's the part we have to be aware of is, I think, our role in all of it, and being aware of that. And, it's okay. We're all human. It's okay to have those feelings and those triggers in us.
Right.
But if we let that overtake us or debilitate us in a job or a family relationship or whatever it is, then we really do need to look at that. Is that something we want to spend our energy on?
Absolutely. So, where do you turn for help? Psychology Today.
They always have the
They
answer.
always have the answers. So we're moving on to in case you couldn't sense it with that wonderful segue, we're moving on to the article section of our episode. And we are going to look at an article. We'll pull it up there on the screen for you, called Toxic People, How to Recognize and Avoid Them. And the subtitle, Narcissists, Frenemies, and Chronic Complainers Cause Interpersonal Disasters. So I hope maybe there'll be something helpful in this. I think there's a whole lot of stuff out there about toxic people. Some of it I don't really buy. I do see a lot of stuff that's just kind of like, hey, babe, you're great. Don't let people tell you you're not. And it's just this really surface thing. Okay, I'm not sure what that voice was. Or that was a little attitude. I had a little tude there. But I'll say this. There is some reality. Sometimes we can write it off. And there is some reality where you got to say, am I in this? Am I putting myself in a toxic place by allowing this to continue to go on? So hopefully we'll get a little help from George Everly Jr., PhD. So one of the things that he points out pretty early on is about consistency of behavior. And it can be a clue, he says, in picking reliable friends. As a psychologist, I've been trained in the diagnostic assessment of people and their behavior. This often means that I have to assess a person's integrity, honesty, and trustworthiness as part of a job application or security clearance. I've spent thousands of hours refining my skills, but the most powerful tool I've ever learned was taught to me in a 5-minute conversation. So the bottom line is consistency. And he's going to share with us some of the things he's learned. But consistency of personality is a big thing. And that's where I figure out, if we had this blowout and I felt just horribly, abused emotionally or verbally or whatever, being able to decide or to determine, is that fundamentally, are they consistent with this? Or is this a one-time event?
Right.
And that's not always easy to tell. So,
right.
But what I'd like to get into, he gives 2 key questions that we'll take a look at. One, have they ever done this before? The answer to this question will help you distinguish an honest mistake from an enduring pattern of behavior. Everyone makes mistakes. A mistake is what they did. Repeating the same behavior several times is no longer a mistake. It may be who they are. And then 2, what type of person behaves like that? In other words, what type of person does what that person just did? The answer to this question gets to the core issue of whether this is the type of person you want as a friend, acquaintance, business partner, or even as a spouse. So those 2 things. Have they done this before? And what kind of person does this? I don't know. What do you think about those?
I know that at times when the first time I experienced a person to be a certain way, it may be some sort of a shocking blow up of some sort. I know I've found myself just in shock that they were capable of that. And so then there's this little question that I hold in the back of my mind about, will that happen again?
Yeah.
And knowing that it has, that's like the first issue, is
right.
Knowing it's there, knowing it's a possibility, and then, gosh, I don't really ever want to experience that again. And so I think that's a really good point. It's hard for me to get past it sometimes.
Yeah, well, and some of that is the natural human anticipation. I know I've seen this happen before. Is it going to happen this time?
Right.
What's going to happen? The second question really strikes me as also kind of important. I think it's easy to lose a sense of what sometimes what is normal and acceptable. Especially, and I'm thinking about long-term relationships. I've seen a few where everyone else can see that. We'll just say he is toxic. She can't see it because she's been in it for 30 friggin' years, and she doesn't. What should be abnormal is now normalized.
Right.
And I think waking up and saying, what kind of person does this? I can see it out there. I can see it over there. I recognize it. I just can't see it right here. And I think that's hard. Maybe
the reverse is happening there, though, where that person is thinking back to what they fell in love with, or what they, was
they're imagining.
They're imagining that, and they know that person. It's like the opposite. Have they ever done this before? They used to be so kind and considerate and friendly and tender and whatever other word you want to use. And this is just he does that sometimes, but it's a side thing. It's not really who he is.
Yeah.
When actually anyone else can see that's exactly who he is she is.
Yeah. I also want to turn it inward as well. I mean, I think it's a good question for us to ask ourselves. If I find myself doing something, hurting a friend, it's not a bad question to ask myself, what kind of person says that? What kind of person does that? Is that the kind of person I see myself as, or am I not even meeting my own standard, but just staying blind to it? So I think that's important. A couple of other things. He gives us a few types of toxic personality, and I want to just mention these 4 types and see if these don't, you may get faces in your mind or names in your head. So we'll see what he has to say about this. The first type that he lists is the narcissistic aggressive person. So we'll pull this up on the screen. Aggressive and selfish individuals tend to be adventurous and risk-taking. They're superficially charming and glib and exciting, inclined to be possessive, verbally abusive, and sometimes even physically abusive. They tend to be controlling and intimidating towards other people. They seek out friends and partners of the opposite sex who tend to be needy and look up to them. They tend to see themselves as assertive rather than aggressive. They have a sense of entitlement that leads to remarkable selfishness. As a result, their entitled selfishness extends to usurping the rights of others as if they were their God-given prerogative. And he goes on to talk about rules and laws and things like that really don't matter to them. They kind of fly above them. Now, you see this and you say, oh, wow, here's someone who really knows who they are. They're a risk taker. They're out there. They're kind of exciting. That's that upside. That's maybe what draws someone. That's like the Venus flytrap. That's the thing that draws somebody in.
The charming piece. And the exciting piece. A lot of times the folks that are out there that you really notice are noticed because of those things. They have this charisma or something about them that just draws you in.
Right.
And then I get pictures of people in my mind who I have noticed that in, who once you're sort of drawn in and you become close to them, you start to notice these other things. And
you're mine now.
Yep.
You're mine now. So, you're everything that we do is about me.
Yep.
And that's the way it's going to be.
Yep.
The frenemy. We'll pull this up. The frenemy. A frenemy is a person who seems like a friend but is not. They will often act like a friend, especially when you are in times of need. But beware, their desire to help is not based upon altruism or true concern for others. Rather, they derive a sense of self-worth and often superiority from assisting others who are worse off. The frenemy reveals themselves when you experience happiness and success. Frenemies will then often become jealous, passive-aggressive, and intolerant when faced with the happiness and success of others. So as long as I'm in a rough space and needy, they're coming in with all their big help, and they're gonna solve problems for me. But when I get my stuff together, suddenly there's competition, there's jealousy, there's
Yeah, that jealousy piece is huge. And I know there are times that I feel it too, where someone, you've just been there for them so much or whatever, and then suddenly everything's going, and there is sort of a sense of, gosh, I thought they needed me more, or I thought, or I've been on the other side too, where, I've come out of something kind of dark and then wanted to still have that friendship and be in that light place, the joyful place with them, and it doesn't work anymore.
Part of what makes this toxic is what kind of a life is that? I can be friends with you, as long as I never get to a place of being in good shape.
Right.
Of having things going well for me. Once things are going well for me, then we can't, you're going to be jealous. You're going to be angry with me. You're not going to be there for me anymore. You're not going to be with me in the good stuff. You'll be above me when I'm needy, which feels good for a while, but I'll have to stay needy. I'll have to stay needy.
Yeah.
And that's a real problem. The next one he mentions is the negative complaining person. Wow. And which one of us decided to do toxic people as an episode?
That would be you.
Okay. The negative complaining person never seems really happy. Nothing is ever good enough for them. That's the negative part. And then they are more than willing to let you know about it. That's the complaining part. They appear pleasant on a superficial level, but the longer you know about them, the more erratic their behavior becomes. And it's often interspersed with an obstinate or manipulative quality. They have mastered the use of passive-aggressive behavior as a means of making everyone else as unhappy as they are. Misery loves company. Now, I recognize this in certain people that I know. Perhaps even in myself. Perhaps. I would hope not to the level of being a toxic person. But these patterns of being negative and complaining, and I really don't, who am I if I'm not complaining about something? Who am I if I'm not negative? And if you have a problem, that's fine. I'll listen to it. But then I'll tell you mine that's like twice as bad as yours.
Right.
I don't know.
It's exhausting.
It is exhausting. And it's a death spiral. It's a downward spiral. You're gonna race each other to the bottom. See who can be the most miserable. And that's really not helpful for anyone. Okay, so this last type, okay, the seductive, overly dramatic person. Let me pull that up. The seductive, overly dramatic person can be great fun. Often the life of the party. They're usually physically attractive, charming, and exciting. They do things to attract attention, which might include sexual flirtation, seductive actions, and dress. They're often risk takers. Sadly, many of these individuals are painfully insecure, and this pattern of behavior is actually a way of compensating for insecurity. These people are usually quite superficial. They judge themselves and others by external criteria, such as what they have, how they look, and who they know. So this one's really sort of sad, I've known folks like that, and this is, and you know what? In a way, this if this is toxicity, this is probably the one that is most difficult in a way to separate off from, because you really, a person like this, you can, if you have any empathy at all, you can feel that all of their stuff is a cry for attention. And if you're empathetic, you want to give it. And the challenge is, that's a great thing, but at what point do you determine I will never give enough attention? Right. It's just toxic.
Yeah. And I think sometimes one of the things I've noticed in folks that maybe tend to be this way is their focus on the physicality, like the what they're wearing, what they're, if it's a woman, maybe their purse, their makeup, their whatever is out there. They lead with all of that.
If it's a guy, their car.
Okay. And I don't want to pigeonhole too much. I mean, either way. They're leading with something that's not who they are.
Yeah,
that's the point, right?
They're externalizing.
Yes,
they're externalizing with whatever on the surface shows that I'm all that, is covering up the fact that underneath the surface I don't think I'm all anything. Right. I'm just really kind of lost. That
need to put something out there that is so opposite of where they really are.
Right. We talk about compensation. Whatever it is that I'm putting out for you to see, to hide what I'm really feeling. And I think for us as thinking about, toxic people, I think the challenge though is that kind of person really can use a good friend.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But how am I being a friend? Am I being a friend in such a way that I am encouraging the already unhealthy pattern just because it feels good to them? Or am I being the kind of friend who can help them feel good about who they are without all the compensation, without all the,
Right.
And that's the challenge. So I'm just going to read this last little list. He talks about what friendship should be based on. We'll pull this up for you too. Friendship is based on mutual trust. Friendship is based on fidelity, really carrying through. Friendship is based on kindness. Friendship is based on loyalty. Friendship is based on honoring others. Most importantly, friendship is based on being of assistance when needed. Thus, friendship means assisting others in times of need and expecting nothing in return. There's not a transaction in a healthy relationship. I mean, yeah, there's give and take, definitely, but it's not transactional. It's not, I'm going to help out because I expect you to return that. It's I am going to be of assistance because I care about you,
It feels like those all have a motivating factor of love and kindness.
Yeah.
And if that's what's motivating you to be with that person, you're probably on the right track.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there we go. That wasn't horrifically painful, was it?
No,
Talking
it was
about
good.
toxic people? I was really worried about it. I was thinking, man, I'm just turning the positive uniqueness into uniquely toxic and then talking about it. Wow. So you got a quote?
I do.
All right. How does it fit with toxicity?
I'm not sure, but I'm betting that you can make a connection here.
I bet you can make a connection too.
Okay. So here's the quote I came up with for today. I've always loved the idea of not being what people expect me to be.
Oh, wow. That's great.
Yeah.
That, what, and here's one of those things. We celebrate uniqueness. And if the uniqueness about me is something celebratory, then that can be surprising. I'm not what, if the uniqueness about me is toxic, that can be surprising as well.
Yeah, it can.
And nobody wants to be caught with that surprise.
Right.
Gee, I thought you were a good friend, and oh, you're not. You need to be on 2020, one of those specials or something. Oh my gosh. Well, thank you.
It's
That
good.
was great.
Thank
That's
you.
terrific.
Yeah, and it's good to think about. It's good to just reflect a bit on all of that.
That's right. That's right. Well, thank you. Join us again. Our next episode is going to be right here in Sharla's house.
We will.
We'll see you then.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye.